Yeah, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Hannah Martinez just shortly. In this talk, we're going to be going over the dashboard and our in-app reporting functionality, which is available to admins and end users. And we'll be talking about some different use cases for that, and how you can use those tools to ensure accurate data quality and get that data in a performant way, and how you can make custom tailored reports without needing to work with IT or other technical resources right within the application. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague Hannah. And yeah, thanks for joining us.
Great, thanks, Eric. So like he mentioned, my name's Hannah Martinez, and today we're going to be talking about the dashboard and reporting, and kind of some of the stuff that goes along with that, how our reporting functionality works for those of you who aren't familiar, and then some of the specific reports that you can utilize in the system in order to get that information out that you're really looking for. So like I mentioned, I'm going to start with the general overview of our reporting functionality, get into some specifics of how it works and how you can use it to develop your own reports, and then we'll jump into some specific examples. So this is our reporting functionality. If you look over in the left-hand side, in the left-hand navigation, there's a reports tab. And this is available to any of the users at your institution. So whether that's end users or your admins, all users will be able to access reports and kind of find that data and get those insights that they're looking for. So once you select reports, you can see up here at the top, we have a list of the different item types available in the system. And there's a report for each of those item types that you can go into and kind of move around the data. Down here in this bottom section, you have your saved report. So once you go into one of these reports and you make all the configurations that you want, you can save that report and it will appear on your reports dashboard, which is this screen right here, for you to kind of get easy access to anytime you log into the system. That way you don't have to recreate it every time you're looking for that specific data. If you look over here on the right-hand side, you have this action to be able to download a CSV of one of these saved reports. And the reason we have that functionality is there may be circumstances where you have a particular report that you have to run on some sort of regular basis, whether that's once a month, once a quarter. So this allows you to kind of come in once a month or once a quarter, whatever that cadence is, and download that CSV so you can get that data out as quickly as possible. So in order to create a new report, I would select this, the tile for whichever information I'm looking for. So right now I'm going to go into a course report. And there's some data, some columns that we have that are going to appear automatically by default for you. You can remove all of these columns. This is just some information that may be interesting to you that you may want to report on. If you want to change this configuration around a little bit, you can go ahead and select configure columns up here in the upper right-hand corner. So this list of columns is going to pull from all of the fields on your form, on your course form. And you can kind of scroll through and find the fields that you're looking for, find that data that's going to be interesting to you or relevant to your particular report, and check that box. These columns are actually also drag and drop, so you can kind of move them around and order them the best way you want. So one of the things that I've typically found is I'm not always interested in seeing the description, so I may move that to the end so that it doesn't take up so much room, or I may even disable it so I can kind of fit more data in there. So once you go ahead and you select all the columns that you want and rearrange them to the exact position that you need, then you can go ahead and start filtering. So up in the upper right-hand corner, you can see that there's some filters available. And there's various different kinds of filters that we have available. The first one is your status filter. So you can come in and you can filter all of your course data based on its status. So there's two sort of different types of statuses. The first is the status of your documents or your active proposals. So these first three statuses, you have active, retired, and inactive. So you can filter on all your active courses in the system. There may be a circumstance where you want to filter on all of the retired courses in your system to see kind of, hey, what's been retired? Are these things we want to reactivate or put back into the system, or are we okay with these remaining retired? Then the next group of statuses that you can look at are your proposal statuses. So these are the proposals that are going to create your active records. So you have your draft, which is essentially your proposal before you submit it to workflow. So kind of, this might be something that you're working on with several of your colleagues. So you can come in here and filter based on all the course drafts in the system. You also have approved, which is once the proposal moves all the way through the workflow and is approved at the end of the workflow, that's the approved status. We then have under review, which is the proposal while it's in the workflow. So this is a common one that can be used in your reporting that kind of gives you access to see everything that's in your workflow and filter it accordingly. And then you have denied. So this is anything that has been in your workflow process that is denied in the workflow. This might be an important report for you to see. We know that there are some institutions where denial is a really uncommon thing or very rare thing. And so being able to see everything that has been denied in order to kind of figure out what those next steps are, what needs to happen to those particular proposals, it'll allow you to do that. And then finally, revision. So not all of our institutions are utilizing this functionality, but we have versions and revisions in curriculum management. So you can create a new version, which will create new dates for your particular record, or you can have a revision, which is just some of those smaller changes that won't be directly related to the dates in your system. So if you're just looking to see all the revision proposals in the system, you can go ahead and select that. The next thing that you can filter by is include latest item only. I'll just cover this really fast. This is essentially, you may have some courses in your system that have multiple versions. And so if you just want to report on that latest version, you can go ahead and select include latest item only. Instead of it having to list all the versions, it'll just list the latest one. The next one I want to cover is groups. So this is going to allow you to filter based on the groups of your proposals. So this is kind of hopefully what will allow some of your end users or your departments or colleges to come into the system and use this default report in order to find the data that they're looking for. So they're maybe not interested in all the data in the system, but they are interested in their specific department's data. So they can utilize this type ahead here in order to find that information. The last thing is advanced filters. So this functionality is going to allow you to filter on some of those fields on your form. And so once you set up the structure of how you want the report to look, then you can use the advanced filters to kind of filter it down to see that specific information. And we'll go into some specifics about how you can utilize this different functionality in a minute. I'm going to go back a few here just to show you the last thing, and that is your ability to save a report. So if you go back to the action section, you'll see this icon here that allows you to save the report. And this is what's going to put that report on your reporting dashboard for you to access in the future. So if you select Save Report, it'll pull up this little drop down here or modal here, and you can kind of type in the title of what you want your report to say, and then hit OK, and that will put it on your saved report section. Okay, so now that we've gone through, oh, there's one more thing. Here at the top, you can see that you have the ability to expand all the rows or collapse all the rows. So there's some information like the description, like I mentioned, or your rules, where there's a lot of information being held in one particular row. And so you may want to keep it all collapsed so that you can see all the other information on the report. But this functionality at the top is going to allow you to expand all rows or collapse all rows, so you can see that information for whatever the relevant scenario is. Okay, so now that we've gone through some of the basics of how reporting functions, I want to talk about some of the specific questions that may be asked. So one of the things that we understand that we've seen a lot of is that at your institution, you're getting a lot of questions from different people in the system, whether that's your end users or other stakeholders who are interested in the data that's happening inside of curriculum management. And so one thing to know is that it's always really helpful for us to know what those questions are so that we can make sure that we know kind of what's the best way in order for you to get those answers. So I want to go through a couple of these questions, a couple of pieces of information and reports that might be useful. So we're going to talk about how an end user can keep track of their own proposals, how an admin can keep track of the workflow cycle, and then just some specific questions on how an admin can get insight into curriculum in the system. So the first thing is keeping track of your own proposals. If you attended the workflow session earlier in this week, we talked a little bit about this, but I want to cover it again and just show you how end users can find information on their proposals. So the first thing is the dashboard. So this is the dashboard. Again, that screen that users will see right when they log into the system. They'll see a list of all their proposals here in the middle, or the first, believe it's the first 10 proposals. And it's filtered by what has been edited the most recently. And then over on the right, you have your action list. And this is an action list for approvers. So when they come into the system, they can immediately kind of take action on a proposal. And we also know that sometimes approvers are not always paying attention to their emails. And so they may not know that they have something there. So when they log into the system, it's right there available for them and they can see that they have a new action request. So a user can keep track of their proposals by viewing the proposal on the dashboard. If they select view all in the upper right-hand corner, that's going to take them to this proposals tab, which is a comprehensive list of all the proposals in the system that you can filter based on proposals that are yours, proposals that are specific to courses, proposals that are specific to programs, and things like that. So that's how they would get a little bit more filtered information about their particular proposals. They can also see the current workflow step of their proposal, and then they can go ahead and select view if they want to actually click into that proposal. Once they get into the proposal, they'll see the workflow tracker, which is going to show them all the history of the approval process for that particular proposal, and give them a little bit better of a sense of where that proposal is. So when they have that question of how do I know what's going on with my proposals in the workflow, this is one of the best ways for them to find that. So the next thing I want to jump into is the workflow cycle. So we've often heard that your workflow cycles can be very complicated. It can be very difficult to get people on track and get people to get their proposals out of the workflow quickly. And so we want to give you access to some of those insights. And reporting is a really great way to gain access to the insights of what's happening in your workflow cycle. So the first thing is talking about proposals that are in progress. So what you would do if you're interested in finding this information about proposals that are in progress is you would select configure columns up here at the top, and you would find the column that says workflow step. And this is going to be available to all of your proposals. This is not information that's on your form through a field or anything like that. It's just kind of that data that's behind the scenes. So I've gone ahead and I've selected workflow step. And as you can see, it's appeared up here at the top of the report. These are all empty because none of these are proposals that are actually in the workflow yet. So in order to get those proposals, I would select filters and I would select this under review checkbox. So I only have a few proposals that are under review. I imagine this number will depend on how far into your cycle you are. If there's some institutions that we know that kind of are running proposals through the workflow all year, and other institutions where it's kind of in set particular time. So this number of proposals that is appearing may change depending on the time of year you're in. But for us, it's only 3. We don't have that many in the system right now. But as you can see, it's going to display that these proposals are under review in the system, and it's going to display the workflow step that they're at. So this kind of allows you to see, okay, what's the general status of our workflow? What's going on? Are things kind of nearing the end, or stuff more at the beginning? And that prevents you from having to go into each individual proposal and figure that information out, or asking particular users where the proposals are. Excuse me. This will allow you to actually see that information right in front of you. Another thing that you can select, and I don't have it on this screen here, but there is also a column called Days at Workflow Step. And what this will allow you to do is it's going to list out the total number of days that a proposal has been at a particular step in the workflow. And again, we think this information can be helpful to you in your workflow cycle. So you can kind of go ahead and see, okay, there are a bunch of proposals that have been stuck at this particular step for an extended period of time. And so we know that, something needs to change in order to get these proposals to move forward. And it kind of gives you a sense of how long your workflow process is taking and if things are going to get to the end in time so that you can take action on those proposals. The next thing that I want to review is how to view your recently approved proposals. So if you go into, again, configure columns, you can select this column called approval date. And then if you select filters and filter based on active, it's going to list out the approval date for each of your records. And that way you can see when things were approved and how many things were approved in a recent period of time. Another thing that you can do is filter at the top of your workflow, or sorry, at the top of your dashboard. So right here, I filtered this based on the most recent approval dates. So now here I have a report that's showing me all the approval dates for my most recent proposals, and I can go through and see how many have been approved recently and how our workflow cycle is doing. The next thing that I want to talk about is curriculum insights. So there's lots of different ways that you can configure reports to find out curriculum insights. And like I mentioned before, we're always curious to know what are some of those questions that you're getting asked? What are some of the things that people are looking to see through the system so that we can see if we have the ability to access that information in your reports. So one of the things that you're able to report on is course credits. So what are the credits in your system and how does that relate to your courses? So again, this is a little bit repetitive and I apologize for that, but if you go up to configure courses in the upper right-hand corner, you can pull in the course credits column. So this is data that's being pulled directly from your form. If you are utilizing our credits gadget, it's going to pull directly from that gadget. So you can see here we have course credits that's appeared as a column and it lists out all the credits for these particular courses. You can also see that we have some differences, right? So with our credits gadget, you have the ability to either enter a single number or you can also enter a range or multiple numbers. So this is going to display those single numbers here, and then here we have a range of 1 to 6. So now maybe I want to filter on credits above a certain number. So I can go to filters up here in the upper right-hand corner, and I can select advanced filters. Now in advanced filters, like I mentioned, it's going to pull from the fields on your form. So here I've selected the course credits field, which is that same field that we've added as a column. And then there's a couple different conditions that are available to be reported on. So the one I selected is greater than or equal to 3. And I just entered the number 3 here. So I'm going to look for a report where, for all the courses in the system that have credits above 3. That way I can kind of view them and see, you know, that may be a number that's not common at our institution. Maybe we don't often have courses that are above the number 3. And so we want to check those and make sure that they actually should be that way. So I can go ahead and select OK. And now it's going to filter based on that number. So it's going to filter on all the credits that are a single number over 3 or have a range that are 3 or above, or the top number is 3 or above. One thing to note here is now that I've created an advanced filter for my report, you can see that it has this little edit icon here. So I can see that there are advanced filters and I can turn them off if I want, if I don't want to see them anymore, or I can leave them as is. And then you can also look up here and this top section of the report to see that this report is being filtered on advanced filters. That way, when you log into a particular report, you know that it's not just kind of the regular data, that it is being filtered by something. The next thing that I want to show you is prerequisite reports. So again, you will go up to the configure columns action icon up here at the top, and you would select your rules gadget. So most people have this name differently, but what we have it called here is curriculum requirements, and I've selected it here. Again, I can put that anywhere, put that column anywhere I want. So right here, right now, I just have it kind of towards the end, but I could put it towards the front if I wanted to. And then if you look over here, you can see that by default, all of these requisites are collapsed. So if I wanted to see them all expanded, I could go ahead and select expand all rows, or I could expand an individual one by selecting the little arrows right here. So I've gone ahead and done that, and I've expanded it to see all of the rules that belong to this particular, I believe this is a program. So this particular program, oh yes, it's a program. So I can see all of the rules that belong to that program, and I can go through and kind of select and view those as needed. Of course, like I mentioned before, there's lots of different things that you can filter your reports on. So if you get to this information and you have filtered based on programs, you may want to filter your programs based on a particular department or based on a particular college. You may want to filter based on a particular status, and so you can do that as well. You can also filter based on other advanced filters if you want. So this kind of allows you to kind of hone in on that data that you're really interested in and make sure that you are reporting on exactly what you're looking for. Now, before we turn it over to questions, I want to talk through a couple of tips of things that we've noticed in the creation of reports and ways that you can kind of utilize our reporting functionality to make things a little bit easier. So the first thing is this code column up here at the top. So like I mentioned before, the code column is something that's going to appear by default automatically in your system. And for programs and specializations and experiences, for those of you who are familiar, you are able to input a code and a title for each of these item types. So courses are a little bit different because oftentimes courses are using subject codes and numbers and a title instead of just code and title. So what this does for your course report is it's going to combine your subject code and your number into one code. That way you can kind of filter on that however you want. You can see how it is next to your course title. But if you are interested in reporting on them separately, you can go ahead and again, configure columns up in the upper right-hand corner and actually select those fields. So here I have it as prefix and number. So I've selected those specific fields, and then I can go ahead and deselect code. And that way I can filter based on each piece of data individually as opposed to put together. So that's one tip I just wanted to add in there, something that might be useful to you in your course reports. It could be, depends on the kind of report that you're looking for and the kind of data that you're looking for which specific circumstance you'll want to use. So the next thing I want to talk about is the item URL. So one of the things that we've kind of noticed while people are running reports is a lot of times people want to run a report and they want to be able to come into that report and kind of click through all of the value or all of the courses that appear in that report, whether that's to just view them simply or to make changes to them or view what the changes were. And so that's what this column is going to allow you to do. This will appear in all your reports, the item URL. So you can go ahead and select that, and that's going to give you a URL to each of your particular records. And that way you can click into them and view them and go through the entire list without having to kind of go search for them somewhere else in the system. Now, the last thing I just want to review really quick before we jump to questions is our community. I know Colleen has talked about this earlier in the week, and we also talked about it a little bit in the workflow session, but we really want to use our community as a way for our customers to connect with each other and have these conversations with each other. We understand that you may be getting a lot of questions from people at your institution, and it's important to be able to find that insight and find ways that you can share that data with other users in the system. And if you've been able to put together specific reports that you find have been very useful for you, or you've been able to answer certain questions for your users at your institution, please feel free to share that on our community so that you can all kind of learn from each other and find that common ground with your shared experiences. I also, before we jump to questions, just want to invite you to rate this session in Socio. We really appreciate your feedback and look forward to that feedback so that we can make sure we're providing you with that important information, and that if there is information that you're interested in knowing that we're not sharing with you, that we have an opportunity to share that. So I want to dedicate the rest of the time to answering a few questions. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen. Do we have any questions that have come in the chat?
Yeah, there are quite a few that have come in. So I'll just go ahead and read them off. And Hannah, if you want me to take any of them, just let me know. Sure. So the first question is around wondering about a field that had a date it came in from Terry. There used to be a field that had a date, not a campus field, so that you could sort the terms, but can't find it now. Is there a way to sort terms chronologically?
Yeah, I think you should, if you have terms set up on your forms, you should be able to pull terms in. I don't know if there's another specific field that you're referencing that used to be on your form that's not there anymore, but you should be able to pull that terms field into your report and then filter on it based on that kind of, so by selecting the column at the top of the screen. Eric, I don't know if you have any additional insight on that.
Yeah, I think it would just correspond to whatever you're using for the terms picker. And like Hannah said, that may have changed depending on your form configuration. So it may have been called one thing and now it's called something else. But I would recommend just reviewing your form and confirming the label for that terms picker. And then any of those fields in the reports, you should be able to pull in, including that terms picker, and then sort chronologically.
Thanks, Eric.
Mm-hmm. The next question is asking, can you clarify the difference between active and approved statuses?
Yeah, we can go ahead and clarify that. So an approved status is specific to your proposal. So once a proposal goes all the way through the workflow, while it's in that workflow, it'll be in the under review status. And then right when it's approved, it becomes the approved proposal. And your active record is going to be almost a copy of that. And the active record is what you'll make changes on in the future. When you come into the course or the program and you want to edit it, you would edit it based off of the active record. That's where you're going to see the proposed changes button. But you can also, there's another button there that will say view original proposal and take you back to the approved proposal. And on the approved proposal, it's going to show you the workflow tracker. So it's going to show you the history of the proposal and any other proposal data that's not actually going to appear on the active record.
Great. The next question is another one from Terry. It says, if looking at the latest item only, if a course number changed and you search for the old course number, i.e. Business 101, will it bring up the new course info, the new info being Business 110?
So is this searching it on the course search page or trying to filter on it in the report?
I think it's probably the report.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I believe, and Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's going to filter based on what it is now. I don't think that it's going to filter based on the previous version of a record, but correct me if that's not correct.
Yeah, I think that's right. And some institutions will use a particular gadget called an alias gadget to store old versions on the particular record. And if you were using that, you should be able to render that data in the report. Some institutions are also using like essentially a text field with a previous course codes or something like that to store that information. And so it would not appear as your main code field in that case, but it would be a field that you could bring into the report and filter based on that.
Thanks.
The next question is, it asks, can I filter proposals to college if I want to see all proposals coming out of the College of Engineering, for instance?
Yeah, you can definitely do that. And let me see if I can, oh, oops, sorry. Let me share my screen again, just so I can give you a little bit of context as we're explaining the answer to this question. There is the ability to filter based on, sorry, let me scroll up a little bit. Here we go. So you have this group section right here. And so this is specific to some configuration. So we would want to take a look at your configuration and make sure it's set up in order to do this. But essentially what you'd be able to do in this circumstance is select under review to find all the proposals that are in the workflow currently, and then find the college that you're looking for in this group section under college. And that's going to filter all of your records based on that criteria. So again, we would want to kind of look at your specific configuration to make sure it's set up to do that, but you should be able to find that particular data that you're looking for.
Great. The next question asks, does reporting pull from all segments of the program, course, specializations, policies, or can you define which segment you want to report from? You want to report from?
So this would be all data that's on those forms can be pulled up in your column, so you can report on any of that data. So if there's data that you don't want set up in a particular report, you can just make sure that box is unchecked and it won't appear in your report. I don't know if that answered the question, so I apologize.
And I think it really it also comes down to those filters that you're creating if you're wanting to segment your data in different ways. As Hannah mentioned, it is going to pull that complete data set, and then as you apply filters, you're going to be able to narrow that down further. Just like in the filtering by college example or filtering in some other way. The next question asks, is there a way to create a report, for example, distance delivery approved courses, save it and share it with another user in your institution so that they have it available on their account?
So right now, there's no way to be able to just kind of automatically share a report with another user at your institution. If you do want to, you can kind of grab that URL and share that URL with another user. However, any changes that user makes to that report will also change your report. So you would kind of make sure that you want to share it with people who you're okay with them making those changes. If you want to share just kind of a copy of that report, you can always download it as a CSV and then share the CSV file with another user at your institution.
Great. The next question is, if you have multiple roles in the workflow, can you filter the proposals on your dashboard by each role?
So I believe you can use the advanced filtering functionality to filter by a particular role at your institution. Eric, do you know if you're able to filter by multiple roles?
Yeah, well, I think this is asking specifically about the dashboard. And so,
sorry.
No, that's fine.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I see the question. I'm sorry, I misunderstood the question. Right now, it's just gonna show you all of your approval requests, and there's no way really to filter it by role quite yet. But you'll just see the kind of whatever is the newest, whatever those newest approval requests are, will appear in your dashboard.
Yeah, and I think you were starting to get at this, Hannah, but you can use the reports tool to filter based on a workflow step as well. So if you have a high volume of proposals that are coming your way, I mean, you could have designated reports for certain stages in the workflow if you wanted to do that. All right. The next question says, I'm new to Kuali and haven't implemented yet, but does your reporting system only show text-based reports, or does it have the ability to produce graphing or charting reports? For instance, percentage of proposals coming out of each college at my university in a bar chart report. Yeah,
it's a great question. I think there's a lot of insights that can be had about what's going on in the workflow process. Right now, our reports are all text-based and we don't have any graphs or anything like that. But we are always interested in knowing what are some of those things that would be useful for you to know as an administrator. And so that's super helpful for us to know. But yeah, right now it's just those text-based reports.
Cool. The next question asks, is there a way to run reports not based on item types, more specifically a report based on groups, roles, users assigned to roles?
Yeah, right now our reports are based on item types. So there isn't a way in the system to go and run a report based on groups and users and groups and that kind of thing. But we'll make sure to record that that's something that would be helpful at your institution.
Next question is the workflow step reporting with under review filter available to Workflow 1.0 users?
Yes, you should be able to. I actually will need to check to see if it might be labeled as something different. It might be in review, I think, is what it is for Workflow 1.0. But you will be able to, it's the same functionality, it just has a slightly different language to it. I believe it's in review. Eric, is that correct?
I think that's right, yeah. Okay. Let's see, the next question asks, can you pull from all segments and all fields? I guess is a follow-up to that segmentation question, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Paul.
And then there's another question that says, is there a way to filter so that you can identify all courses ending in a certain number and that have an effective term before a certain effective term?
I believe so. I believe that you can filter. I'd have to actually go and take a look to make sure that these specific conditions are available in the system. But I can go ahead and take a look for that, and we can get back to you on that question. Kara, thank you.
And then there are just a few in the chat. Joel, did you make enough for everybody? No.
Yes. And why didn't y'all tell me my mute was off? And you've been hearing me type. I was taking notes. Sorry.
Oh, I didn't hear it.
I didn't hear it either. The next question is there a way to, I think we already answered this about sharing proposal. And then, yeah, Lindy, looks like you added a comment. Can you use, okay, we've got a couple more coming in and we have just a little bit more time. Can you use wildcards in your reporting parameters? I can take that one, Hannah, if you want, but so that there are some filters that, there are some fields that allow for wildcard type filtering where it's like starts with or ends with or contains, things like that. And there are, and then, you know, if you're pulling the report data into, you're pulling it out as a CSV and into some other reporting application or spreadsheet or something, you can of course use the filtering functionality there. Hopefully that answers your question. There's a question, is the revision status filter based on courses that had a proposed change, I think?
Yeah, so the revision is when you do propose a change, it does come from proposed changes, but when you do propose a change, you're going to be making, for some institutions, not everybody has it configured this way, but if you do have it configured to use revisions, once you propose changes, you're going to identify whether you want your change to be a new version or a new revision. And if it's a new revision, then you don't have to kind of change the dates involved or anything like that. It'll almost be a version within your overarching version. I mean, so that's what it'll filter based on. What are the revisions in the system?
I think though that covers all the questions we have received.
Great. Thank you all so much for your questions. We know there's a lot kind of to unpack with reports and lots of different ways that it can be used in order to find that information that you're looking for and answer some of those questions at your institution. So please let us know if you have any questions. Talk to your customer success manager and see if they can help you figure out what are some of those insights that you're looking for and how you can get that out of the system. Again, we really appreciate you all coming to this session. Please feel free to rate it on Socio. And thank you so much for attending Kuali Days, and we appreciate you.
Thanks, everyone.